if Trump won, he wouldn't care about Taiwan.
Okay.
And he mentioned again that, as he did in his book, that Trump told him Taiwan was like the tip of his pen, and China was his desk. 我们注意到中国的立场，可是我们不同意。
美国的一中政策所讲的就是两岸有这个分歧，可是并没有认同中国的领土是包含台湾。大家好，欢迎收看《全球霸主之争》美国总统大选特别节目，我是主持人邱诗怡。这是全台首创唯一一个以美国大选为主的政论节目。我们每个礼拜播出一次，一直播到大选结束，会一直陪伴大家。那也请大家给我们按赞、分享、追踪我们的节目哦。今天呢是这一集这个节目的第2集哦。我们第2集就请到一个超级重量的来宾，是美国的前驻台的代表，就是我们讲 AIT 的处长。司徒文先生 ，William Stanton， 我都叫他 Bill。司徒文其实他是教授，他现在其实已经在台湾的大学任教，在清大、在政大都有任教。那我稍微介绍一下他的背景，他在2009年到2012年的时候，他担任 AIT 的台北办事处的处长。大家可能不知道 AIT 其实还有高雄处，不过我们讲的处长，一般媒体讲的就是台北处，所以他是这个是重量级的哦。那他卸任之后呢，他毅然决然继续留在台湾。跟大家讲一个小故事。本来我们刚刚在这个跟他说有一些证件要跟他这个要的时候呢，他是提供我们跟他要这个外国人的证件。事实上，司徒文先生呢 ，Bill 呢，他已经有台湾的 ID， 有台湾的身份证，所以他是 one of us， 他是我们台湾人哦，所以他其实非常非常喜欢台湾的哈。好，那在我们访问司徒文先生、访问 Bill 之前呢，我们先讲一下最近国际间有一件跟台湾有关的大事，那就是联合国大会的2758决议文。那这个决议文呢，其实现在的澳洲、荷兰国会跟美国的副国旗 Kirk Campbell，I'm not sure you know him or not。Even said， 他们说啊，中国扭曲联合国大会的2758决议，借此来损及台湾地位，压缩台湾的国际空间。其实2758决议文主要的内容是承认中华人民共和国政权为中国在联合国的唯一合法代表，并成为5个常任理事国之一。其实当时候的一个原意是要把蒋介石政权从 UN 就是联合国的相关组织中把它逐出去。但是啊，这个2758决议啊，不能够指台湾，不能够代表中国的身份参与联合国跟其下属的组织。也就是说，这个决议文其实没有提到台湾或中华民国，它只有表示决议驱逐蒋介石的代表，以恢复中华人民共和国的一切权利。所以这个争议在哪里？在于说，中共认为2758的决议的内容，中国包括台湾在内的全部中国领土，并借此宣称联合国已经确立台湾就是中国的一部分，台湾 is part of China， 反对台湾加入联合国跟其他的国际组织。事实上，美国众议院在去年7月就通过一条法律，叫做 Taiwan 这个国际团结法案，叫做 Taiwan International Solidarity Act last year July， 主张联合国的这2758决议呢不涉及台湾，将致力于对抗中国扭曲台湾地位的行径。所以这个法案虽然在 Senate is waiting for the approval， 将会在参议院表决通过。但我们在讨论这个议题之前，我们等一下会访问 Bill。我们先来看一段影片。
Voorzitter, 400 jaar oud zijn de relaties tussen Nederland en Taiwan. En inmiddels is Taiwan een levendige democratie. Toevallig ook de belangrijkste zakenpartner van ons belangrijkste bedrijf ASML. En staat Taiwan steeds meer onder druk van pogingen van China om de 24 miljoen Taiwanese te isoleren in de internationale gemeenschap. VN-resolutie 2758 wordt misbruikt om vertegenwoordiging van Taiwan in de internationale gemeenschap te blokkeren. Het is tijd om te zorgen dat wij uitspreken met zoveel mogelijk democratische landen dat we dat isolement niet willen. En dat we de deur weer open willen zetten naar deelname van Taiwan in die internationale organisatie.
那个院长，等一下那个协商结论，先让我讲完临时动议好不好？我们协商结论也可能可以再处理。我们有临时动议要提好吗？院长，我从一开始就说有临时动议要提，就是请有。已经发到各党的手上哦，大家也不要逃避，也不要视而不见，好吗？我们希望能够针对朝野党团共同拟具一个 针对联合国2758决议，在立法院朝野各党的联合声明，请我们韩院长也不理会不处理，然后蓝白的2个党边资料都已经发到桌上了，但是都视而不见。院长没有这样啊，我们的临时动议还没有处理就宣告散会，这么害怕联合国2758号决议用联合声明的方式来处理吗？那我们要非常清楚的跟所有的报告，并且正式提出一份立法院朝野党团的共同声明。我们希望重申我们共同的国会的立场，促成朝野一起来推动，也就是坚决反对中国远距离合作大会2758号决议，阻挠台湾参与联合国体系的国际组织。非常遗憾这样一个为台湾的国际地位参与国际组织，我们希望立法院有个朝野的共同联合声明。那韩国瑜院长那无视于我们在合理的议程要求以临时动议来跟各党对话，连被讨论的机会都没。
Bill, China asserts that UN Resolution 2758 confirms its sole legitimate representation in the UN, but does not explicitly address Taiwan's status. So, could you kind of broadly or briefly initially tell us about what the Resolution 2758 is about and how we should view this resolution?
Well, the resolution is pretty clear that all it referred to really was the fact that in the future it would be the People's Republic of China, which would represent China in the UN. And since then, China has, or PRC, has used that as an excuse to say, well, that refers to Taiwan because Taiwan is part of China. But that's an assumption that the resolution doesn't include. So it's interesting, years ago, nobody paid any attention to that. But more recently, particularly the last 2 or 3 years, there's been more and more attention to that resolution, in part because there have been people in Taiwan who have said this is nonsense. One of them is Robert Tsao, who's made a great effort on his own part to educate the public, but also to drive people to say, hey, 2758 really has nothing to do with Taiwan. And so then you find people like Mike Pompeo, who have now taken that on as an issue and agreed and said, yes, this is the fact. So there's a growing momentum. In general, overall, there's been a growing momentum in the United States politically to try to give more of the benefit of the doubt to Taiwan rather than just assume that, okay, we can't annoy China. So things have changed a lot. I was in the State Department Foreign Service for 34 years, and one of the big changes I saw over that period of time was growing recognition of Taiwan's status as a country, as a place of technological prowess, of a strong economy, of a country that's democratic, that's free, and deserves respect and support. So I think within that context, it was almost inevitable 2758 would become an issue.
Right. Well, there are 2 points from your answer. One is that the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, Zhonggong, trying to take the 2758 in such a way that it means Taiwan is part of China, other than the CCP, the PRC, 我们讲中华人民共和国 is the only legitimate government representing China, right? But your answer, your explanation is such that it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with Taiwan. That's the first point. The second point is that you meant that it was not noticed before. But in recent years, more and more people, even including the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, say that this is not such a fact, right? Okay, so 所以 Bill 刚刚所讲的其实就是说，这个2758决议文当时候其实它主要的用意是把蒋介石政权把它逐出联合国，跟台湾现在的这个状态是无关的哈。Okay, so could you comment on the Chiang Kai-shek regime at that time? Because that resolution was meant to kick the Chiang Kai-shek regime out of the UN, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it had that effect, but if you cling to the idea that the Republic of China is also in charge of China, then it becomes more disputable. But once you give up the idea that you're not claiming that you represent all of the mainland that the CCP controls, then there's no justification anymore for not saying, hey, 2758 does not apply to Taiwan in the sense that we're part of China. It doesn't. All it means is we recognized that now the UN, as an international body, recognizes that the Communist Party of China is in control of the People's Republic of China. That's what it means.
Okay, and you were a AIT director, and many Taiwanese people are familiar with this term, One China policy, 一中政策. One China policy is sort of like Americans' focus, which is different from One China principle. 一中原则是中共的, which is like by CCP. So, we said this many times in other programs, like including my other shows, that One China policy, the meaning of that is, so on and so forth. But we never heard from the mouth of people like you. Could you explain to us what is One China policy, American version, or just according to American perspective, what is One China policy?
Well, I guess it's basically that we recognize that.
Is it recognize or acknowledge?
We acknowledge.
Acknowledge.
That's the big distinction, the verb you use. We acknowledge the Chinese position that the CCP is in control of China. But we don't recognize that there's only one China, which includes Taiwan. We acknowledge that's the Chinese position, but we acknowledge lots of things, like it may be raining today, but that doesn't mean that it's going to rain every day.
So we'll pause a little bit here. Acknowledge means that the United States notice, meaning that you don't have a stance in that.
Right.
You don't have any position on this issue, right? You just know if there's such divide, in a cross-strait relation. Is that correct?
我们注意到中国的立场，可是我们不同意。
我们不同意。
不同意。
Okay.
If we said we accept, that would be different. But we've never said accept.
And recognize is a stronger term. It's accept, right?
Right.
And even now, do you have confidence in saying that even now AIT still possess this, policy, One China policy, in the content you just mentioned?
Yes, U.S. has been pretty strict about keeping within those lines. So for China PRC to say otherwise is just wrong. But they like to do that. So you can't stop them, but you have to remind them and the world all the time that that's not the U.S. position.
OK 所以 Bill 讲得很清楚哈，美国的一中政策所讲的就是美国人知晓两岸有这个分歧，可是并没有认同中国的领土是包含台湾哈，这个是我们的这个 Bill， 虽然他已经卸任，他讲的话并不代表 AIT， so your statements now is not on behalf of AIT. I hope that this is not a protest from AIT tomorrow or sometime. Okay, all right. Anyway, so that's good. Okay. 好，所以呢，我们现在呢 move on to the next part of the question is that what is your policy suggestion? I know that now you're freer to say something about this type of issues, that if you want to return to the international society, what kind of national title can have? To make it work, number one, pragmatically, ideally, in a long run, what's the national name we could have in order to participate in those international organizations?
Well, there are efforts underway, for example, to get Taiwan to participate. These have been every year, practically. The World Health Organization and other international organizations which are all about doing good, about helping people, that Taiwan needs to be a part of these organizations because Taiwan can contribute a great deal. So the U.S. supports those initiatives. Many countries do now. The problem is that there are many countries also in the world that are either fearful of the PRC or economically dependent on the PRC and are not willing to take that step. So unfortunately, if you go back to a place like the General Assembly, where, frankly, votes can be bought in effect,
right.
or influence can be brought to bear to get votes. There are a lot of countries that are not willing to go that far, even though it would be in their own self-interest and the self-interest of the entire world. To say that Taiwan should not be a part of the, the International Police Agency.
Yeah.
That's silly. Because, if you're trying to catch criminals, you all need to cooperate.
Right.
Same thing on health. Taiwan's a leader in global health.
Aviation, those kind of stuff, Has nothing to do with politics, right?
Nothing to do with politics, and yet China will block that, even though it's not in the interest of the UN agencies, it's not in the interest of global partners to say Taiwan can't be part of it, because Taiwan has so much to offer.
Yeah, but that's ought to. What about a workable solution that, for example, we are in the Olympics, we use the name, which is still strange to me, even though I'm 45 years old, Chinese Taipei, right? I mean, we rather use something like Taiwan or even, ROC, Republic of China. So practically speaking, how can we make it work?
Well, it's a long-standing problem. I just saw a documentary that's been done on C.K. Young and his friendship with an American. He was a Taiwanese athlete, great athlete. He was in the decathlon, and his counterpart was an African-American athlete.
Yeah.
He came in second, the American came in first, but they became close friends. But at that time, the delegation to the Olympics, they walked forward with a flag that said under protest, because they couldn't use the name of their own country. So this is a long-standing problem, very difficult to solve. The only thing I can suggest is that countries like the United States, basically the democratic countries of the world, continue to struggle and fight to convince the rest of the UN General Assembly that this is something in everyone's interest to get membership for Taiwan.
Okay, good. Bill 刚刚讲一个重点，第一个，联合国大会里面很多的国家，他甚至说有可能被买票 ，you say bought, right？ 被买票去施展一些影响力哈，所以其实国际里面，像我们这种现实主义者，我们不认为国际里面没有完全的公理正义，有时候你要靠拳头、靠实力。第二个呢，他对我们台湾怎么重返国际组织的一个建议，就是还是希望这些大国家民主联盟不断的告诉这个 UN、告诉联合国、告诉这个大会说，我们台湾是有我们在很多非政治上不会去触怒中共的议题健康的啦，或者是航空的啦，这等等这一些，还有包括这个国际刑警组织这些，我们能够回到联合国里面，然后让台湾能够跟其他地方的人享受一样的福祉。Okay, hold on, we will come back to the there's a introduction to the American election from this part. So, 说到美国总统大选，摇摆州，我们英文叫 swing state， 是左右大选结果的重要指标。今天呢，我们就请到今日新闻的 AI 主播倪珍第二集来替观众说明。
嗨，邱教授好，各位来宾大家好，很高兴再度跟大家见面。
倪珍，美国的摇摆州到底是什么？我们常常听到这个词，它为什么会变成两党候选人的兵家必争之地呢？
好的，上一集我们分析了美国总统大选独特的选举人团制度，这一集请大家跟我一起来看美国总统大选的胜负关键——摇摆州，也就是共和党与民主党无法在这一州获得压倒性的支持，也被称为战场州。从这张美国地图上来看，很清楚的看见。红色和蓝色分别是民主党和共和党的铁票仓，标示蓝色的加州和美国东北部被认为是民主党的蓝州，德州和美国中部被视为是共和党的红州。选情五五波的地方，这是摇摆州，也是每次选举的兵家必争之地。这次大选有7个摇摆州最受关注，分别是乔治亚州、亚利桑那州、威斯康星州、宾州、内华达州、密西根州以及北卡罗来纳州。2020年美国总统大选。这7个州的普选票差距都在3%之内，竞争相当激烈。拜登当时因为拿下较多摇摆州选举人票数，最终打败川普，成为影响选战走势的最大关键。每到总统大选，候选人在摇摆州的造势场和次数，会比起其他选情稳定的州还要频繁。 在摇摆州之中，宾州拥有最多的19张选举人票，更是选战造势的重中之重，所以被称为取宾州的天下。但今年由于双方选情紧绷，川普、贺锦丽民调呈现拉锯战，因此每一个摇摆州的倾向都将决定最终胜负。以上是这次美国大选摇摆州的说明。
When it comes to U.S. presidential election, Bill, what is your overall assessment of this race? I mean, we know that the electoral system in the United States is very different from countries like Taiwan. That's also your mother states, right? They don't count votes directly, they count the electoral college votes. So that swing states, for example, Florida, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, those states are very, very important. So what's your assessment? Who is leading in those swing states?
Well, I just mentioned that I think it's unfortunate that the Constitution says we have to have an electoral college. And that grew out of the fact that there was a confrontation between those who wanted congressmen to decide who would be president and those who wanted popular vote. And there was this fear that if it was a real democracy and it was just the vote, that might cause problems. But anyway, it's a very close election. All the commentators say that.
Yes.
And the swing states are decisive precisely because of, as you've indicated, this electoral college problem. When I watch the news every night, I see that all they say is it's very close. There seems to be a slight edge right now for Harris and the Democrats. Whether that will continue to hold true, I don't know. I think it's very consequential, though, for Taiwan.
Yes.
I think that it's been very clear that, particularly Donald Trump, he's been very much online. We don't want foreign wars anymore. It's unfortunate that the 3 wars that in recent history the U.S. fought, whether in Vietnam, in Iraq, or Afghanistan, all were ill thought out and did not end well and probably should have never been fought, involved the United States anyway. But I think if that seems to carry over for Mr. Trump to why should we care about Ukraine? I'll solve it in one day. The only way you could solve it in one day is to give it over to Russia. I can solve, because of my friendship with Xi Jinping, I can solve the Taiwan problem very easily. It'd probably mean the end of Taiwan. So my friends in the U.S. military, my friends who are very strong supporters of Trump would be very angry with me. But I have to say, I think the best chances are for Taiwan is if the Democrats win. And I say that particularly because I don't know they haven't spoken that much about Taiwan, but I know that I met once when he was visiting here in Taiwan with John Bolton. And as he said in his book, The Room Where It Happened, he repeated to me, he said to me in person that he was worried that if Trump won, he wouldn't care about Taiwan.
Okay.
And he mentioned again that, as he did in his book, that Donald Trump told him that Taiwan was like the tip of his pen.
Okay.
And China was his desk. It was huge. It was hugely important. So why worry about something so minor? And now it's not minor to the 23 million people who live in Taiwan. And so I think the best bet for Taiwan and the best bet for America, if we're going to support democracies and freedom around the world.
OK, all right. 所以 Bill 他这一次他的选边就是选 Bill, but not trying to counter you. If there's a defense of for Trump is such that Donald Trump he would say just whatever he wants to say, but whether or not he would do it is a different story. For example, J.D. Vance, even though he himself is pretty much an isolationist, argue for withdrawal or pull out all these United States resources from Ukraine and end the war right away. But he also said that defending Taiwan is very important. So the Trump team is more important than Trump himself. Do you agree with this kind of notion?
Well, I think in general it's true that advisors have huge influence on presidential decisions. But we know coming out of the previous Trump administration that many of the people who advised him have rebuked him since then. Both military leaders and people who have served in the State Department, people who have served elsewhere in the U.S. government have said that they didn't trust Trump's decision-making. So I think, I may be wrong, but I think the best bet is to, that Trump not return to office.
Okay, since you mentioned the likelihood of the electoral victory of Harris, we also are curious about her foreign policy, even though that, it's very little known to outsiders, especially people in Taiwan. So if she is elected as president of the United States, some reports say that people like Rebecca Lessener or Philip Gordon could be a potential candidates. I mean, could you kind of tell a little bit about from your intelligence or from your information about who are those candidates, likely candidates to serving for Kamala Harris and deal with the issue of Taiwan?
Well, both of them have both of the candidates you've mentioned have experience on foreign policy. But I'd also like to see, since she said she might choose people who are Republicans, someone like Pete Buttigieg, somebody like, current people, Adam Kinzinger, who have been very supportive of basically democratic values in their views. So I think there are a number of people who are available who would, I think, take a more positive view in America's own interest toward supporting Taiwan.
But people, some conservative wing, they argue that you look at the foreign policy history of Democrats, they've been pretty much trying to appease China, appease Xi Jinping back in 2014, especially when Barack Obama was still, in office.
Right.
And a lot of his policies was very soft on China, and that is why CCP became so powerful now, so out of control, so such a boat rocker, try to rock the boats of the international order. Do we agree this kind of criticism?
Yes.
And also if Harris is in office,
I think it also applies to the Republicans who, in my experience, both Republicans and Democrats were pretty soft about China. Partly because it was perceived to be so economically important. There was such strong business interest in maintaining a solid relationship with China. That's begun to change because they see China is now a competitor. It might not be in America's interest for China to get economically stronger. So I think overall, there's been a shift in public opinion, both among the Democrats and among the Republicans, to be more skeptical about China overall. So that is true. But, the people, I just don't know. I don't have confidence that Donald Trump will choose the right path. That's my problem.
Also, a quick follow-up. So if Trump wins this term, will he maintain his hawkish stance towards China and friendly approach to Taiwan? I mean, this might be an easy answer given the fact that he said, several sentences kind of hurting Taiwanese people's feeling in recent times.
Well, he's also been, a proponent of a good relationship with Kim Jong-un, a good relationship with Xi Jinping, a good relationship with, help us with Putin. I mean, this is not, just because you have a pleasant meeting with someone, if you're a smart diplomat, you don't walk away and say, oh, this is somebody we can really deal with because you had familiar, friendly chit-chat with somebody for a 15-minute meeting. It's just not decisive.
Okay, the final part of this conversation is about your personal life. Because we are curious about you, like this gentleman and also the former AIT director. You were the AIT director, 就是 AIT 的处长 from 2009 till 2012, right? So what happened after that? What made you decide to stay in Taiwan and start your new life after retiring from your post at AIT?
Well, I really enjoyed. I've lived in many countries and visited many more. I served in Lebanon, Pakistan, in the PRC, in South Korea, and during these periods, I was a student in Germany at one time. I visited many other countries around the world, and I just found Taiwan is a really good place to live. It's safe. It's relatively inexpensive compared to a lot of other countries. It has good health care.
It is healthcare is the strongest in the world, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and it's inexpensive overall, and people are friendly here. I mean, people have always been friendly to me, and it's a very secure, safe place. There's not the same concerns that you have, even in the United States, many other countries, about crime, about guns. I'm a big proponent of people shouldn't be walking around
we still
guns.
have gun problem, but only in night markets. You go to night market, 你知道我们在夜市都很多那个枪，但美国是真的枪，我们是玩具枪。
对啊。
Right? Okay. But Bill, we know that Taiwan is a nice place to live. But
I was given jobs here also.
I know, in Qingda, in Zhengda, right? But still far away from excellence, right? So
Taida.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been at 4 Taiwan universities. My first job was actually for a year. I taught at the Taipei American School, and then I was offered jobs at universities. Sure. So I enjoyed that experience. I also, during that time, began to write. I've written some 50 commentaries over that period of time about Taiwan. And I just found a place for myself here as a foreigner who could speak out in support of Taiwan.
Sure. Okay. Finally, still very important. What do you dislike most about Taiwan? I mean, before the show, we talked about low fertility rates and also low pay, those kind of problems. Taiwan is nice, but still, a long way to perfection or to a even better stage.
Well,
Be frank, please.
Yeah.
Be frank.
Well, there is a demographic problem. I've talked to all my students about this, that Taiwan is not producing enough babies. Its fertility rate is now it's less than 2.1 is what you need for replacement. So every couple has to produce 2.1 children because some children don't make it.
And what caused the low fertility rates problem? What caused that?
Well, the result of that is one of the problems you now see in universities. The universities, private universities, are increasingly going to shut down because you don't have enough students to go to private universities. You also, another problem you have is, I think the military needs to get stronger. And right now, conscription is a year long. That was a great improvement, thanks to Tsai Ing-wen. She went out and fought for that and got support for it. But frankly, all the military people I talk to say it's not enough.
Okay, that's the consequence, right? So, I mean, what's the origins of these low fertility
Well, then there are a lot of problems that, I think Taiwan doesn't do enough to provide housing for people.
Housing, okay.
Is a big issue.
Number
people
one.
don't housing. What housing is available is very expensive for what the wages are. Wages are too low in Taiwan.
Low wages, even for university professors. Yeah, both of us are complaining. Okay, 我们两个都在抱怨. Okay, all right.
我不要抱怨。
不要抱怨。
But they're wages are pretty low. The average wage. The government, I think, is happy now that it's nearly 20% of the Taiwanese people who make as much as 30,000 kwai a month.
That's true.
That's not a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a poverty line.
So
people in advanced countries.
Yeah, so as advanced as Taiwan is, as great a place, as many as advantages it provides, more could be done. But that said, there are many countries that don't do enough. I mean, America, healthcare is too expensive for a lot of people. Also, people are not complaining about inflation, rents being too high. It's too expensive to buy a house. So many of these problems are sort of the problems of the developed world in general. So I don't want to just pick on Taiwan. But these are areas where I'd like to see Taiwan make some improvements because I think it's in Taiwan's own interest, if it can.
Okay, thank you, Bill, so much for joining us in the show. And give us honest opinions about the room that we can improve in Taiwan. Okay, thank you. 我们今天真的很感谢，也是我的好朋友 Bill 哈，这个 AIT 的前处长司徒文接受我们的专访，也很感谢各位观众朋友的收看。我们这个节目不是只有做流量，我们还要做影响力哦。那也希望说大家能够真的在网络上帮我们点阅、分享、按赞，继续支持我们做下去。全球霸主之争，下次节目再见，拜拜。